Hello and welcome to the DOPPIO podcast. My name is Emil. I am a filmmaker slash director slash a lot of stuff from New York, and I'm joined today by my two lovely co-hosts.
Hi, I'm Castleman. I'm a dragon warrior from Georgia.
Hi, I'm Renzo, and I love Kung Fu!
So, if you haven't guessed already, by looking at the title, today we're talking about Kung Fu Panda.
The trilogy.
The three of them.
Yes.
Not because there's totally not a fourth one that's in theaters right now. That one doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's not the topical reason why we're recording this. We just randomly decided, hey, let's do an episode on Kung Fu Panda, especially since our last two review episodes were all centered around Dune movies.
I was going to say, I feel like in this podcast, we've either spoken about Dune or about the Oscars. There are 2023 in film. There's nothing in between.
Well, hey, this is really showing we can branch off and get into new topics. You know, I feel like maybe this episode is the one that we're really proving ourselves that we're not just a two-trick pony.
Yeah, we can do other things. And what a way to get into this other than Kung Fu Panda, a film produced by DreamWorks. Film series produced by DreamWorks. The first one came out in 2008, which is a really long time ago. And it really does not feel like that long ago, but it really was. So, what was your personal histories with this franchise, with Kung Fu Panda? Did you guys see this first one in theaters when it came out?
I saw it in theaters. I remember it was 2008. I just saw Iron Man, and then I was like, "Oh, this is such a good summer! Iron Man, great movie." And then my mother and my sisters, they wanted to see Kung Fu Panda. Personally, I didn't want to watch Kung Fu Panda. And then she kept on like, "You gotta go with us. You gotta see Kung Fu Panda with us." It's like, I don't want to. Can I rewatch Iron Man again? But then because you're a kid, you gotta follow your mom. So I did. And honestly, I left the theater, was like, oh, okay, I'm glad I actually went along with them and saw this movie, because this movie's great. I love this movie. So that's my very first experience with Kung Fu Panda.
So
I was hesitant.
Question for you, Renzo. So
Yes.
did your mom see this movie before taking you?
No.
Like, had she known that it was a banger?
No.
Or she just knew?
She just wanted to watch another summer movie with my sisters and me. So she was inviting everyone. My dad was busy, so she was like, "Let's go see a movie, Kung Fu Panda. You've seen Iron Man. I've seen Iron Man. So it's like we got to watch something new." And I gave her a chance, and honestly, me giving this movie a chance was like well worth it, because I love this movie. So yeah.
All right.
How about you,
Castleman?
Castleman?
So I never saw this in theaters. I don't think I saw any of the original trilogy in theaters. I mainly just sort of... I try to remember the exact point I decided to sit down and watch Kung Fu Panda. I think it was after... You know who actually gave the recommendation for me to watch this movie?
Who is it?
It's an internet figure who doesn't really have the greatest legacy or I think I saw back in the days when I still watched this guy, I saw a review that the Nostalgia Critic did of Kung Fu Panda, where he said this movie is so good. I was like, okay, so I decided to watch it, and yeah, no, this movie's really, really good. I don't think it's perfect, but I think it really is able to do a lot of things right. Yeah, no, this is for me. This is a 4.5 star movie. I've backed and across viewings. I've gone back and forth from like a 4 out of 5 to 4.5, but I think I pretty much settled on a 4.5. I feel like this is a really well animated, really fun movie.
Well, I will say, I first watched Kung Fu Panda when it was in theaters, the weekend it came out, and then I never saw anything Kung Fu Panda ever again after that, until we began recording for this podcast. And I'll be honest, I didn't really want to watch these movies. I really didn't.
Wait, I have
going
a
into this.
question. I have a question. So you saw it on like opening weekend. What did Kid Emil thought of Kung Fu Panda 1?
Kid Emil thought it was okay, but he wanted to go back to playing Pokemon Diamond.
Okay.
And it's really funny because I think the 13-year-old version of myself had a very similar reaction to the movie Gravity, but
Oh, no.
that's not the subject of this podcast.
So how many movies do you have like from? Do you have like a vendetta against because they kept you away from Pokemon?
I think Kung Fu Panda and Alfonso Cuarón's Gravity. Was it Cuarón that directed that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
Quentin.
it was Kung Fu Panda and Cuarón's Gravity that make that list. I'll put it on my letterbox later. If I think of any more, I'll put them on. But yeah, I honestly, there was a point in my life where these sorts of like family animated, 3D animated like movies really just like fell off the radar. I mean, for me, I was like, get into like anime and like that sort of stuff. And honestly, I really, for a while when I was a kid, I fell out of like American films like altogether.
Okay.
And I just kind of didn't really watch a lot. And when Kung Fu Panda 2 came out, is pretty much around the time I like started getting into anime, and I just like literally did not even think about watching it. Um, and as I've gotten older and I've gone back to appreciate those kinds of films, particularly DreamWorks films. Thank you, Castleman, for taking me to go see the Puss in Boots movie. I love that. Um, so after I got an adult, starting to appreciate them more, I think I can look at them less with like bias because I do prefer 2D animated stuff generally, but I don't want to take away from the incredibly difficult and hard work that these 3D animators have, and I do think it is a beautiful looking movie, all of them that I've seen. But anyways, so Castleman, what did you say your rating was? 4.5 for this one?
The first one, yeah.
Renzo, what's your rating for this movie?
4.5 as well. That's the highest one that I could give for this movie. Honestly.
Wow. Okay. So, okay, I definitely have the lowest review out of all of us for this movie. I gave it 3 stars. I will say,
Okay.
it took me 3 separate viewings to watch this movie.
1 star for each viewing.
1 star for each viewing. So I don't know what it was, but the first time I sat down and tried to watch this movie for this podcast, I just like could not get into it. I think my heart was not open to Kung Fu Panda yet. But on the second viewing, I tried again, and I was buying it a little bit more. I was like, okay, it's only 90 minutes. It's not that bad. Pretty well paced, and looks like I was starting to appreciate the animation a little bit more. But then I had to go do something like in the middle of it, and then I came back and I was like, no, I'm gonna finish it this time. So I went back a little bit, finished the second half of the movie, and at that point I was like more locked in. But I did enjoy it. I think by the end it is a really cute movie. It's just I think I don't know. It's hard to criticize it particularly because it's just like the first one is a movie that's just like kind of like not for me, but I can respect it.
Yeah.
Ah.
I will say
That's like
like
where I land on
watching it's funny when you said the first 30 minutes because the first time I watched this, like I think the first 30 minutes of this movie work, but like I think the first act is probably the weakest of the movie if I had a problem because like I kind of think that the it's like I can tell where it may have like turned you off a little bit from like the outset, because it's like very much sort of presenting one. If it like has a hand of cards, it's presenting you just like the weakest part of the hand, and but like I at the same time I kind of feel like that part is sort of integral to the point that they're making, with the film itself. But like rewatching this movie, like I can understand why the first 30 minutes sort of turned you off. For me, like I think it's a good. Those first 30 minutes are very good, but for me, I think the movie really comes into its own, especially in like the second act, especially with like the scenes with Oogway and like
Mm.
the
Mhm.
because like I think Oogway is a great character, and he like really has so many amazing quotes in this movie, and you know you know that's why we call it the present and stuff like that. So. But I was like, I think I told you, is like if you can just get past the first 30 minutes, I think you'll overall like this movie. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I did agree with that. I think the first 30 minutes were probably the weakest, but it goes to I think a larger point of like going into a movie with a mindset, you know, like going in with certain expectations. Like the first setting I had, I just was like, I was in a pretty bad mood that day, and I was like, I'm just not gonna like this movie. Like, and I went in knowing I'm like, I'm not gonna like this movie. But so I felt at a certain point that I was just really not having a great time watching it, and I know that this is a good film. Like people
Mhm.
whose opinions I trust very much tell me that this is a very solid film. So I think I just needed to open my heart to it. Honestly, like I really needed to just go into it, just taking it for what
You
it is.
needed to be like Shifu. You
Yeah,
needed
you were
to,
you're
Yeah.
basically you're basically Shifu.
Yeah,
you're like,
and
what the hell can this fat panda offer kung fu?
you-
What can he do? Why is he here? Why is this panda doing kung fu? Get out of the dojo. I you know why is this obnoxious, silly little panda who in the first 30 minutes just does a bunch of goofy things? Why is he the one who should be the dragon warrior? So you were literally
Yeah.
Shifu watching this movie.
Yeah, I was literally Shifu watching this movie. But you know, it's really funny you mentioned Oogway earlier because I think the moment I like locked into this movie like for real was Oogway's death. Because I was like, oh damn, they're doing that.
Really, at that point?
Yeah, I was really like,
Because for me, early on when it was Oogway and Poe talking, that was the one where I was like, this movie's really special. Like that, like the messages throughout this film is the one that's what I like about this movie. This movie has a lot of heart. That's the reason why I really love this movie. Like if the movie like has a ton of heart, it basically reaches into my heart as well. So that's the reason why I actually adore this one. So early on, like even with that scene, I'm like, oh, okay, this movie really is for me. So that's just me. Sorry
Well,
if I stray away or
I
anything.
think that's just really interesting because, like, I feel it is very funny. I feel like you were almost reacting to the movie itself the same way. Both Shifu and the rest of the Furious Five were like, okay, because like I feel like the movie really has to prove itself. Because the thing with this movie is the title is objectively stupid.
Kung Fu Panda.
yeah.
Like it sounds like direct to DVD garbage that you would see in the 2000s. Like you know, it like the thing is, if you look at this movie on the cover, I think I sent you that poster for the ripoff movie, The Little Panda Fighter.
Yeah, you did.
Aside from like you would think that this movie would be on that quality. It's just like, okay, kids like animals and kung fu is like a fighting thing. Okay, Kung Fu Panda. This will make us bank. And originally this movie was supposed to be a spoof. Like this was just going to be nothing but goofy and silly and like just a really dumb movie. But then like they low like then they got kind of like slowly changed things around um from certain influences where they're like, hey, let's like, you know, instead of just making a spoof, let's like look more into like these Eastern influences, let's look more into Chinese culture, and let's see if we can do more of this. Because I will say I can agree with you because I think this movie's funny, but I don't think it's like hilarious.
Yeah. The
Question.
comedy like honestly didn't really land for me.
I have a
Yeah.
question. So do you think if they continued on like for Kung Fu Panda to be like a spoof, don't you think it would have been like offensive? Do you have a feeling
Yeah.
like years from now, like this doesn't hold up, and it would be like really offensive to like Asian people, to
Oh
Asian
yeah.
culture, definitely, right?
I mean, well, I mean, it's 2008. They didn't really care about stuff like that.
Oh my god.
But yeah,
Yeah.
this could have been like this would have been the type of movie where if you said this could potentially been the type of movie where if you said you liked it, people would look at you kind of weird.
Oh god.
Not yeah, potentially, very potentially. But the thing is, it's a movie that I think the whole thing with this movie is that it's interesting because it has so many things in here that should not work, but they do. And I feel like the thing that's sort of at the heart of that is like the theme of the film is be yourself, basically.
Mhm.
Or it's like the true you is what is really gonna save the day. And it's a thing that in other kids movies usually sucks, because it's such a tried and true and done before little message, and it's like a decent message, but at the same time, like in many other kids movies, if I see this, I roll my eyes, right?
Mhm.
But this is like the rare kids movie where I think it works perfectly because it's what the film is to its very core. It's a case of where almost everything is sort of very specifically engineered to like almost make you doubt if you're watching this with more of an adult mind and you're not just a kid laughing at the silly humor. You're almost like not wanting this. You are agreeing, as I said, with Shifo. You're agreeing with the Furious Five. Like this panda doesn't belong there. He's like just a goofy guy. But what's great about it is it like the main. It's a movie where the main reason he defeats the villain is because he was different. Is because basically to teach him, Shifu had to invent a new style of training to really sort of understand him and get to a point where he could be taught. And I think that's interesting. And like I feel like it works because it actually pays off of it. Because I've seen movies where it's like the message is be yourself, but if you actually think about the story, it doesn't work because being that character being themselves is what caused a bunch of problems. Well, in this movie, it works like beautifully because it and like I think it all goes back to the dragon scroll itself, where it's basically a mirror, and it's you having to look inwards at yourself to find what you can be, the best you can be.
Mm. That's a good
Retweet,
point.
brother. Retweet.
And how great is the action? The action sequences in this movie are incredible. Like so well choreographed. And I they're using like cartoonish physics to like the best possible extreme. You know?
Oh,
Like
and you know what adds to that as well is the sound design. I don't know, not a lot of people talk about the sound design in this movie, but it's really creative. And when I was a kid, I that was one of the things that I've actually noticed. And I think I saw like a behind the scenes where they talked about that. Oh, we wanted to basically like create like unique sounds. Like there's like in animation, the certain sounds that you would expect, but for them, they actually wanted to prioritize like not only with the action, like you mentioned, but they also wanted to create unique sounds. That way, it's a whole nother experience, like watching these action sequences. So
yeah.
that's just an additional point.
I mean, and even going back, I love how like in the film's final battle, almost like everything comes back. Like every little thing that Poe had done throughout the film, if you're paying attention, he uses to win in the final battle. Like throughout his entire journey, even in the first act, before he even really started training. I think that's like really clever writing because it really feels always on rewatch that like, oh, that was setting up this bit, that was setting up this bit, and it again, it's all directly engineered into the
Mhm.
idea that Poe being himself is what allowed him to defeat Tai Lung.
The stairs scene before he faces off Tai Lung.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So-
It's still iconic. It still holds up. The what are you gonna do? Sit on me and then pose like, "Don't tempt me." It still gets me every
Yeah.
time.
There's some
Love this
good
movie.
jokes in this. Some of
Yeah.
them are very like for little kids, but some of them I think are pretty cleverly sort of executed. Um,
Oh god.
So I have a question for you guys. Like one, this is one that I wrote down in my notes. So this movie came out the same year as Wall-E, and lost the Golden Globe and the Oscar to Wall-E. How do we feel about that?
I prefer this to Wally.
I prefer this to Wally
Really?
as well.
Really?
Like, okay, Wally would be like a masterpiece. I am kind of the guy who says the generic opinion. The first half's a masterpiece, the second half is a mess. I like Wally. I think it's a good movie. It's far from my favorite Pixar film. I don't even know if it's in the top 10. It might be. I'd have to check.
I don't know. Kung Fu Panda is way more enjoyable. It's all kung fu, no filler. I watch Wally and sometimes I'm just bored watching Wally. That's just me. Like to each their own. Like I know Pixar was basically doing something high art with Wally. They were doing something different. But honestly, like them going too different with it, nah, no. I'd rather have something that has like a really good heart. And Kung Fu Panda delivered on that. So yeah.
Honestly, and which one is more body positive? Let's think about it.
Oh, dude.
Because it's like, oh, look at this horrible future where everyone's fat, and then Kung Fu Panda's like, hey, look, this big fat panda defeat the villain by being a big fat panda.
Yeah, just be yourself. I don't need to be like, like that's what I like about it too. Like even Poe in the like he was even doubting himself or like, how are you gonna change this? Like this is look at me. But then in the end he was like, no, like just being myself is the thing that's, gonna help everyone.
Like, and you can say, oh yeah, there's lots of fat jokes, and you say, oh, this means this movie is whatever. I would never agree with that statement. I feel like that's a pedantic way to look at movies. It's just funny how like these movies are like saying opposite things. But of course it's Wally that won the Oscar. And I'm not even like a huge like guy who goes on about stuff like this. I just think it's very funny. Like which one is technically more progressive in today's society? Um yeah, no, I think there's another interesting theme that's not like at the forefront of everything, but I thought it was pretty cool. I think there's an interesting sort of duality between fathers in this movie, between both Shifu and the goose. Because it's interesting because like you had Shifu who's like this really he was like trying to bring up Tai Lung is his son, who's like this, to be a great master of kung fu, like a huge, powerful master, and he sort of ended up creating a monster, while Mr. Ping, the goose, raised his son to just love noodles, and it's just like an interesting sort of tale of fatherhood that's like that's not really talked about or even focused on too much, but I think it's kind of cool, and I think it's also pretty cool for how it sort of sets up how it goes in a little deeper into it in Kung Fu Panda 2. Yeah, no, I just think that's a cool little thing.
Yeah, I thought the stuff with Poe's dad in the first one was some of my favorite stuff in the movie. I think that is it's a very strong theme in the film, and
there is no secret ingredient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, do we have anything else to say on Kung Fu Panda 1?
One of a great Hans Zimmer, John Powell score.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'll go even harder in Kung Fu Panda 2. So
Yeah.
So segueing on to the next one. This is a movie that was hyped up for me quite a bit. Castleman, I'll let you talk about this.
Okay. I don't know. Okay. Uh, I I'll just get into it. Kung Fu Panda 2 is my favorite 3D animated film. I absolutely adore this movie. And I know some people are like, oh, what about Spider-Verse? What about this super influential movie? It's like, oh yeah, those movies are great. And you can argue that those are more inventively animated or whatever. But when it comes to like everything, like a complete package, I just think Kung Fu Panda 2, I think, is one of the best sequels ever. Because like I think Kung Fu Panda has a few problems that I think are basically non-existent in Kung Fu Panda 2. I think this is a perfect movie. I do. I think this is a movie that is like firing on all cylinders from the first frame. As soon as I see Oogway fishing on the DreamWorks logo, I am like into this movie, especially from the like from like that opening animation bit, which I think is beautiful. And I think this movie really shows because the director of like the more traditionally animated sequences in the original movie, Jennifer Yu Nelson, is the main director in the sequel. And I think it shows because this movie like has like such a complex understanding of all types of animation, and I love how it uses the animation itself is like it's not just like a stylistic choice, it's almost like a level to convey memory. Like 3D of course is the present day, but like animation itself is almost 2D animation itself is almost conveyed to express like the loss of detail when you have suppressed memories almost. And I think that's a really interesting choice there. And like to me, this is a 5-star movie. I'll get into into all the details later, but I'll just say before I talk on and on for this movie for the next 5 hours and hog the time, I'm just gonna say I think this is a 5-star movie. It makes me feel every single emotion, and it makes my cheeks very wet from the tears. So I'll pass it on to you, Mr. Renzo.
Yeah, honestly, I'm also five banging this movie easily. One of the best sequels ever made. A sequel that's not afraid to go into more mature subject matter. If the secret sauce of Kung Fu Panda 1 is to be yourself, the secret sauce in this movie is emotional vulnerability and trauma. So that's the secret sauce in this movie, and it works really well. How rare is it for like animated films to like go this way? Like I can't name it. Like especially like that's what I love about DreamWorks, because they can like whenever they do a sequel, they're going for more like mature stuff, because like at least they respect their audiences that have aged up a bit, so you're learning more lessons about life that you never wouldn't even expect when you're younger. And I've seen this one. I was a teenager when the first time I saw this movie. I was still in my teens, and now having seen this movie in my late 20s, I'm basically like, wow, this movie hits me harder in a more emotional level. I respect everything that they've done for this movie. And I wish we could have had more animated films like this. So that's what I have to say right now with it. So yeah, how about you, Emil? Are you
Yeah,
is it
because
at least
you
more
were the
than three
skeptic.
stars?
Yeah, you're the skeptic here. So how are you feeling?
Well, I will say this one took less sittings to watch than Kung Fu Panda 1.
Wow, we're already an improvement.
Already an improvement. I actually have this movie at 4 stars. I will say I like it a lot more than the first one. And this movie kind of fucks, honestly. Like it actually it goes so hard. I'm gonna say shout out Caleb. I know this is your favorite movie of all time.
Shout
And
out to
I can get
Caleb.
why it is. Shout out Caleb. Yeah, I really liked it. I've been thinking about the final battle sequence in the film since I watched it a couple days ago. That was probably my favorite part. But I think this movie it has the sauce in it's overflowing with sauce even. It's a film that treats its audience with respect in a way that a lot of other animated films don't. And it's a beautiful use of the medium of animation. I actually didn't know you said, Castleman, about the director of this film being the 2D sequence director on the previous one, and I can definitely, it makes a lot of sense now. A lot of things are clicking and gears are turning in my head. I think I love the use of 2D animated sequences in this one. I think maybe, I don't know, maybe one of the best uses of blends of 2D and 3D in film, in animated films. I don't know. Yeah, great villain in this one too.
Gary Oldman.
Really great villain.
Gary Oldman. He's awesome.
The commissioner himself.
Shen.
Sirius Black.
Sirius Black. Yeah, so Castleman, when you first watched this movie, like when you're watching all these for the first time, what was the moment when you were watching and you were like, yeah, this is peak? Like the first time in the movie, like, you said that from the Oogway thing, but that you've seen it. But like now, like the first time you watch it, going back to that Castleman, when were you like, yeah?
I'd really have to go back, but I think it's kind of when I was like, okay, this movie's peak, and I think it's within the first 20 minutes. Because it's like when the goose is like when Mr. Ping, James Hong, is recounting how he took in Po. And like it's kind of like a perfect scene because like it's cute and it's a little heart-wrenching and it's also just like funny too. And like it all sort of is, and like, dude, on this rewatch, it made me tear up. A goose was making me tear up 20 minutes into this film.
How many times did you tear up in this movie? Because I actually I was trying to hold back tears a lot of times in this movie.
The description for this video, this episode is going to be a goose makes Castleman cry.
I'm okay with that. I'm proud of this goose making me cry. But it's like, it's also sort of summed up. And by like the line where Mr. Ping is like how great the scene is, because it's like a perfect blend of comedy and emotion, where he says, and then I made a decision that would change my life forever. I would stop putting radishes in my soup. And I would raise you as my son. That's just like, it's like the perfect kind of joke that doesn't undercut the emotion because it fits for what the character is, you know? Like he's like low-key my favorite character in these movies, Mr. Ping, because he's like, he's so loving and like, but he's also like quirky and he's a businessman too. I like how he's very much sort of rebranded his noodle shop to be based around his son as advertisement.
Shout out to James Hong, legend.
Shout out James Hong.
James Hong is a legend at this point.
I think that's the moment that makes me go, this movie's peak. Actually, I think there's three moments in terms of levels of peak. There's a second moment in the movie where I'm like, okay, this is beautiful. And it's another moment. I think it's when Tigress hugs Po, because like this entire movie, we've just been getting main context into like Poe's backstory and like what made him who he is. Because in the first movie, we don't really get any like explanation of how he became raised by the goose. It just sort of like throws you into it and like, lets you go, oh, this panda is being raised by a goose. Okay. And we're not really given much to work off of there. But then in this movie, we're finally getting lots of backstory. And then what I love about this is I really like how it fleshes out the relationship between Poe and Tigress, because they're so different characters, but because one is like molded to be hard her whole life, and the other one was molded to be, by Mr. Ping with a lot of love. But at the same time, he's like just now really beginning to unpack how much trauma was in his early life. And I love the moment where she says the hardcore do understand and hugs Poe, because we don't understand. We just sort of interpret that, and they don't say what she's been through to empathize with Poe. They mostly just sort of leave it completely ambiguous, and I love that. You just know that she's been through enough that she knows exactly what he's going through at that moment. That he's having this crisis of all these traumatic memories coming back up at this worst possible time. But she does understand. And I like that they don't need to tell you exactly why. Because I feel like other movies like, oh yeah, as a kid, this happened to me. But I just like how you just have that one little moment with her. I really like that.
Yeah, that's what basically like it really just shows you like how much Poe is like really masking that trauma that he had. Like he's really hiding it away. Like with the opening like minutes of this movie, like you could tell like his being of a dragon warrior is the thing that's really just masking all of the pain that, that's been like buried deep inside him. And the fact that like the relationship between Tigris that you mentioned, like it just further shows that how much he's hiding that. I think that's beautiful. It keeps it consistent till we get to like that great scene that we're gonna be talking about, where all the emotions are just gonna not a dry eye at that moment. So yeah,
I think we're all tiptoeing around that scene because I know that's
yeah.
like I don't know if I want to get into it just yet because it's a lot to unpack.
It is.
I may segue. Just how great is the action in this movie?
Oh my god!
They doubled it.
So good. Yeah,
they pushed themselves.
Like, from that first fight in the musicians' village, which is just so fun, right? Like,
yeah.
It's just like a fun way to express that.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, what an action-packed like first scene, like such a good scene for Poe, like first scene.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, like, as like their whole like, theme and like whole vibe is like kung fu, and what is it like when you learn martial arts? You have to keep improving yourself to better yourself, and I like how in this direction for Kung Fu Panda 2, yeah, let's keep doing that. Let's better ourselves. Like, we learn new stuff. We better showcase these new stuff that we're like learning and like harnessing. So it keeps it consistent to what they're doing production wise, to also with like the film itself.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I just think there's. I guess we can just might as well. I'm sort of almost avoiding it, but I want to. Okay. I guess we can go into what is my favorite scene in the movie.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
And it's the scene at the burnt village. Because at this point in the movie, it's like it's a down moment that really works. Like he's been defeated, and he has like this inability to defeat this villain because he has this extreme PTSD that pops up every time he sees Shin's symbol. And it's like this thing where he's failed his friends, he's failed to protect what he cares about, and he's just like completely at a point where he doesn't really feel like he can achieve inner peace. And that's like a big thing. This movie is all about finding a way to achieve your inner peace. To really be able to progress yourself, you have to be able to look deep inside at the things that hurt within your mental state, within everything inside you, and be able to find a sense of peace with them. Like to accept them, not to run from them, but to directly confront them. And by directly confronting them, then you can understand yourself even more than you ever have. And in that scene, it's where he finally kind of unlocks that memory, that like deeply traumatic memory where his people were basically genocided. This movie is about genocide. And that's the most insane thing I could possibly say because it's Kung Fu Panda 2. Like
a movie with an objectively stupid name.
a movie, because I feel like when you add a sequel number to the objectively stupid title, that's even stupider, right?
Yeah, it is.
And the fact that this movie is literally about a survivor of genocide coping with the trauma of it. And that's insane, right? And you would think it's like would be a tonal disaster. But I do not think it is at all. It like works all beautifully, and in that specific scene, when we really understand what's happened and Poe really is able to achieve this inner peace, and we have and we're talking about how well this blends 2D and 3D animation. I think that's summed up by this beautiful moment when throughout this time we've seen all the flashbacks in nothing but 2D animation, right? Whether it's Shin X, all of this has been in 2D animation, and then finally, as Poe's mother puts her baby in this basket, hoping that he can be taken to safety, and preparing to sacrifice herself for her child, then that is the moment it chooses to fade from the 2D animation into 3D, firmly contextualizing itself with the present day visual style.
Yeah.
Perfect choice. One of a beautifully inventive artistic choice that almost represents that is the exact moment where Poe fully accepts his past. By not visualizing it in that style, but by accepting it as part of who he is today. And that's super important too in terms of the theme, because it's all about, as Michelle Yeoh's character says, like, who are you now? It's the rest of the story that makes you who you are.
And then it cuts to a montage of like everything on Poe's journey, and then it just hits, and you're just crying, and then the music, Poe finds the truth with Hans Zimmer, John Powell just hits you hard. Dude, I cried real hard to that scene.
I cried so much. I cry. It's honestly one of the hardest I've ever cried in a movie. I'm being entirely honest.
God.
Because it's just so perfectly engineered. It's emotion cascading in the most... And there's no comedy in that scene. There's none. It's just... It's like it's taking itself as seriously as it possibly needs to. And it's insane if you just said, hey, there's a movie called Kung Fu Panda 2 to someone who has no idea of anything, right? The movie that they'd think of in their head, and then you show them this scene.
Yeah, definitely does not what you'd expect from a movie titled Kung Fu Panda 2.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking, man.
I remember being at the line of the ET ride back in January of 2022 when we went to Universal Studios, and you were telling me the plot of Kung Fu Panda 2. I was like, wait, I can't remember if this was with you or Tay. I can't remember. But I think it might have been with both of you in that exact same location.
Maybe.
It might have been with both of you in this exact one, but it was with you. That might be why I got it confused. But I remember you telling me this, and just like,
I don't think I said the entire plot. I just said that the movie is about genocide.
Yeah, which that alone was not what I would have expected from a movie titled Kung Fu Panda 2. Which is a movie that I literally knew nothing about at that point.
Why was this movie like emotionally hard hitting? Was that because of Charlie Kaufman being involved in this movie? Is that the reason why?
Like, apparently Charlie Kaufman really liked the first one, and because he needed he needed I guess mortgage payments or whatever, he agreed to do uncredited rewrites on this film. And maybe that's what makes it like such a step above the others, because I like the other two in the trilogy, but I don't even think they're even close to this one. This one is like just one of those movies that is just such on an insane level in terms of everything that I just don't really understand it. It's kind of a miracle movie when you really think about it.
So I guess we better add Charlie Kaufman to this sauce as well. This movie.
You know, maybe he wasn't the secret sauce. He was like the secret spice. They just put
The
a little
secret
bit of
spice,
Charlie.
okay.
They put a little bit of Charlie Kaufman, and we got this movie.
Oh god.
Because
yeah.
I this is one of my favorite movies. It
Also,
really is.
I forgot to mention design wise for the villain, like Tai Long, okay, but everything aesthetically, Lord Shen looks great.
Mm-hmm.
Like I
Yeah.
love the look of Lord Shen in this movie, and like the sounds that he makes with with his feathers or even the blades. Like I mentioned with the sound design, like even that one is really great. Like god dang, next level stuff. But yeah, I give all my love to Jennifer Yu Nelson. You know, the first Asian American to direct a major American animated film. Kudos to
I
that.
think this is one of the. This is my favorite movie directed by a woman.
There you go.
That's a statement. That's a
It
statement to
is.
make.
I'm being unironic there. Like and again, I think I can say that after you've heard me gush about this movie. It's not. That's not a reductive statement at all. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. This is a work of art. I think this is one of the best movies possible. And you said your favorite scene was the finale, right, Emil?
Yeah, with the cannonballs and like and Poe like reflecting them like the drops of water from earlier in the movie because he found his inner peace. Dude, I like locked in. I locked in for that. That was the moment. That was one of the moments where I had the controller in my hand and I sat up. Dude,
when he turns into a yin yang, oh my god!
Yeah, it goes hard. It's a good movie.
Yeah, it's very much. So,
I'm honestly I'm teetering between a 4 and a 4.5.
Oh my god!
On it, I'm teetering between 4 and 4.5, and I think I'm just like one rewatch away. I think I just need to watch this movie like one more time, and I'm open to watching it again. I will say I'm very open to watching it again.
At some point, there'll be a 5 bang for sure. Me and Castleman are just waiting.
Yeah. And can I make a point that is a little less positive, but I'm going to try to give it a positive spin.
Okay.
Recently, I watched another kids animated movie that came out in the last couple of years. I'm not going to say which one, but I saw this movie. And I swear, like, I like lost faith in cinema for like a little while because of that movie. I felt so bad for the movies that these kids are getting nowadays. Like it was just the kind of film that was just a nothing burger of a movie. Like it just like I felt like worse after than before, and not in like the good way, you know. Like
I'm curious. Can you DM it to me?
Oh, you know what this is. No, you know exactly which one it is, Renzo. It's one
Renzo.
that
I'm gonna type a quote from this movie in the group chat. I think you'll know it.
Okay.
Live Renzo reaction.
My reaction to that information coming up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So all this to say, I just watched this movie, made me remember that, these movies that are made for kids do have the possibility to be good and great. And sometimes the studios just get involved. And sometimes it's just I don't know. Sometimes miracle movies like this just happen.
Okay, I know what it is.
That's the right one, right?
Yeah, that's exactly correct. I mean, I remember I hopped on a call with you guys after, and I was like distraught. I was so upset after watching that movie.
Worse than Pixels? Was that the one? Or Emoji Movie? Emoji Movie, sorry. The Emoji Movie.
I don't think it's worse than Emoji Movie, but it's like because this is a movie that made a lot of money. That's like what made it worse for me.
Yeah. No, I feel like, well, that's the thing with DreamWorks. You'll either get a masterpiece like Kung Fu Panda 2, or it's like a weird gamble, you know? Like Disney, I think almost always exclusively produced like movies that are kind of just okay. Like occasionally you'll have a movie that I'm like, okay, that's pretty good, but it's still gonna have like a lot of generic cliches that I'm sick of. While with DreamWorks, you either get a movie that is like the most low grade, pandering to the smallest children, and the poor parents roll their eyes, and then then you might actually get something that's 10 times better than anything you would see Disney make. And honestly, I kind of prefer. You know what I think? You would actually, if I, I almost kind of prefer it. I'd rather have. I don't know. I'm not a gambler, but I do low key prefer high risk, high reward to just settling for mediocrity every time.
At least in terms of the quality of your movies, you know.
Yeah, because if a movie's really bad, then hey, it's more memorable.
Question: does this movie have a sequel, or did it have a sequel?
Yeah, it has 2.
Oh god. So basically, it didn't go to the route of, oh yeah, it's the sequel. We better do something better this time. Okay.
Yeah.
It's funny because the sequel was noteworthy for something, but that's neither here nor there. I don't want to talk about that movie anymore.
I wonder if people are gonna do like detective work listening to this, trying to figure out what movie it is.
I will say I log every movie I watch on Letterboxd, and I'm very consistent about that. I'm consistent on few things in my life, but that is one of the things I'm very consistent on.
All right, you have the clues, listeners. It's up to you to piece them together. A, it is an animated movie from the last few years. There's a very memorable quote from this animated movie that Renzo knew immediately from seeing it. And third, he logged it on Letterboxd in the last few months, on Emil's Letterboxd. All right, listeners. That's your mystery. Get to detective work.
And if you win, you get a Fox and the Hound VHS.
I do have a Fox and the Hound VHS. I actually have a physical copy of that. I found it in my attic yesterday. So if you actually write in, I will send you my copy of the Fox and the Hound on VHS.
Wow. First person to guess it. Oh man, we made this a little too easy. Maybe we shouldn't have done that. Maybe we shouldn't have done that.
Who would have thought that we would go here?
Yeah, God. Then you'll make me speak its name on the podcast. So let's I think we've spoken a lot about Kung Fu Panda 2, and we've sung its
actually
praises.
have still one main note.
Go ahead. My apologies.
So the final battle, which I think is one of my favorite final battles. I'm just gonna say one thing about it. The track by Hans Zimmer and John Powell that plays during that scene is called Zen Ballmaster. Okay. I just want to say, listening to that track is how I got my mile time under 6 minutes. Say
it again.
Listening to the track Zen Ballmaster from the Kung Fu Panda 2 soundtrack got my mile under 6 minutes. My mile time. It's a very good soundtrack to run to.
Okay.
Yeah. I know that's like a random piece of information, but it's just one of the best little pieces of score, and I just feel like everything is just to me, just personally, I think it's a perfect movie. I don't have any problems with it. Yeah, and I've seen it a lot of times, and so I didn't necessarily think. I thought it was like a really, really good movie the first time I saw this when I was in high school. It's just a movie that literally has gotten better every single time I've watched it, and I just kind of feel I love it. I love every little piece of it. I love that little moment where the otherwise sort of silly little wolf guards of Shin, one just refused to fire on his own men. It's the sort of movie that is able to have little memorable moments like that. And from everything from the tiniest little moment to the huge moment that's a perfect little culmination of the main character's arc. I just feel like this movie is just so well written and perfectly engineered. So yeah. Is there anything else you want to say about it, Renzo?
I think I'm good. I just found out Charlie Kaufman actually has a DreamWorks movie out on Netflix right now. So
Really?
there you
What's it
go.
called?
Orion and the Dark.
Ryan in the Dark?
Orion and the Dark.
Orion.
And
Orion
yeah.
in the Dark.
written by Charlie Kaufman apparently.
Cool.
So there you go. He actually made a DreamWorks movie at some point after Kung
Wow.
Fu Panda. After Kung Fu
Wow.
Panda 2. There you go.
Well, moving on to the next one. This is Kung Fu Panda 3. I have yet to watch this one. And Renzo, I know you've seen it, but I don't know if you got a chance to rewatch it. But I know
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I know Castleman did, so we'll say a few words on this one. But if you guys, I have nothing to say here. But if you guys have anything to say, go ahead.
Okay, I'll start first since I I know Castleman will talk in depth with the third one, having rewatched it. I will say I did not see Panda 3 in theaters. I don't know why they didn't release it in theaters. Because everyone else was like have seen Kung Fu Panda 3, and then I just had to see it on VOD instead. Like, what? Okay. Saw it. I thought it was okay. I thought it was good. But it's no Kung Fu Panda 1 and Kung Fu Panda 2, but I did have a good time watching it. And before we were recording this podcast, I was actually listening to I mean, wasn't listening. I was watching the first 10 minutes of this movie, and I think after we record this episode, I think I might go back and watch it because yeah, it's a good movie. I just need to like refresh my memory on how good this movie was. So, Castleman, I give the stage to you to talk about Kung Fu Panda 3.
Oh boy. This this episode's alternate title could be Castleman yaps about pandas for a lot. Yeah, so Kung Fu Panda 3 is an interesting movie. I like it. But it's interesting because I feel like this movie has like it has one huge thing that makes it that it is the best at in the trilogy, and then another thing that is definitively the worst. This is the best looking movie in the trilogy. Like, because Jennifer Yu Nelson returns as director, and she is my favorite Kung Fu Panda director. I think she does a really amazing work, and this movie is gorgeous. And I think the second one's gorgeous, and this one is even a little bit better. It like there's like, and especially in terms of like interesting environments, we get to see the spirit world in the third one, and I feel like it looks absolutely entrancing. The biggest sort of issue with this movie, it is the worst written in the trilogy. It's like there's like just a lot of things where it just feels a little it like the goof level is pushed up a little bit. I think the biggest problem is Po just doesn't feel like, I feel like if you look at Kung Fu Panda Po and you look at Kung Fu Panda Po 2, you can see that is a character while still being himself that is continually evolving. Wow, in Kung Fu Panda 3, Po just kind of doesn't really feel like he's evolved too much since the first one. He's still a good character and he's still a good protagonist, but like I feel like his arc just kind of also feels a little bit too repetitive of the second one, and it's done way better in 2. Like my thing with this movie is that it almost feels like the studio stepped in because the second one was too dark. And
Yeah, I actually felt that when I was thinking about like Kung Fu Panda 3, like they were kind of like scared. It's like, did we go too far with Kung Fu Panda 2? Did we have to basically just like let's add more of the kid stuff more, that way, we're back in track? I don't know.
Yeah,
That's
and
my point.
it's not all bad or anything. It's just it definitely does feel like, and if I can compare this to a movie I really really love, it kind of much feels movie has a lot in common with Return of the Jedi.
Mm.
where the previous one was pretty dark, and this one it has a lot of it has a village of a bunch of cute cuddly animals.
Ewoks.
Yeah.
Pandas.
Yeah, well, here Poe finds more pandas, so you have a whole village of pandas, as seen in the end of 2. So it definitely, I guess it definitely has that thing, that same sort of issue, and it definitely loses a little bit of the depth of the second one, but it still has a lot of amazing scenes. There's this one scene where Poe's father, who is played by Bryan Cranston in this movie, which is that's an interesting casting choice, but there's this one scene where Poe's father talks about Poe's mother to Poe. It's a really great scene, and that's like one of the scenes that off the top of my head feel on the level of Kung Fu Panda 2. I got, even if this is not the greatest movie, I still got a little misty eyed at that scene because I knew exactly what had happened to her. But the it's definitely a little bit of a step down, but similarly to Return of the Jedi, it's still a very worthy ending to the trilogy. Like, I feel like this, if there's no more Kung Fu Panda after this third one, I would be satisfied because I feel like it settles like an overall emotional arc for the series pretty solidly, even though if it could have been written better. Like, it's a good ending, I think.
Yeah, we're the ending. Shame there wasn't a, sequel or anything,
Yeah, it totally wasn't.
So Kung Fu Panda.
Kung Fu Panda 4 doesn't exist.
What's a Kung Fu Panda 4? What?
Is that like the Xbox 720?
Yeah. In all seriousness, with that movie, there's like a thing where like I don't know.
Are you scared? Are you scared to watch it? Because remember, we had a Toy Story 3, and that was a good ending. And then we went ahead on Toy Story 4, and we all know what we felt about that one.
Well, the thing is, I think Toy Story 3 is a more definitive and better ending than Kung Fu Panda 3 is, right?
Okay.
So, like, I was open for a fourth one. Like, I completely open.
Okay.
Like it doesn't it isn't like it ends things in a way that there can't be a fourth one, I just think that I have concerns about this fourth one. Almost everything I've heard about it like is a case of I didn't like the trailer, and then since it's come out, a lot of people who I trust in the Kung Fu Panda space have not responded to it very positively at all. And it definitely does kind of, and things about that movie have come out from behind the scenes that kind of feel like there was like one director who really wanted it to respect it with how good the first 2 films was, and then the other director, the main director, seemed to not really want that. So, and this is, I haven't seen the movie yet. This is just what I've heard, and I mean, I'll just be honest. You kind of, just to continue the concerns, you kind of just have to look at the budgets, because the first 3 films had budgets around 150 million, right? Yeah. And you can see that budget, and this newest one has a budget of 80 million.
Oh boy!
Really? They went down on the budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't have the 5 in this one, right?
Yeah, the Furious 5 is not in the fourth one. Because apparently they don't want to pay Angelina Jolie.
Well, I guess that's what happens when you cast 5 characters that are all like name brand celebrities.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because like, isn't like one of the most central relationships of these movies the friendship between Poe and Tigress? Like,
yeah.
I mean, there's a point where we're basically, all in the third one, like she's like the only 5 left standing, in the main plot, and it's just kind of weird where like Poe's like basically main friend is just not even in in the next one.
Wait, now that I thought about it, wasn't the plot of like 4 was Poe was looking for a dragon warrior, like a new one?
Yeah.
Dude, like it would have been like perfect if like for the fourth one it was Tigress who finally takes the place. It would have been like a better one like thematically and like story-wise as the journey of these characters.
Just make a spin-off called Kung Fu Tiger.
Oh my god.
I don't know. It just it's a movie that I'll probably see eventually. I'm just not particularly excited for it because I've heard nothing but things that have me hesitating, especially in terms of this is a series that I care really passionately about, as I've
Yeah.
established in this episode of the podcast.
Once you've seen it, you can never go back, Castleman.
Yeah. You know, I maybe I'll do a field report. I'll see this movie and you guys will may hear about it someday.
One
Okay.
day on this podcast, you guys will get a
I'm
Kung Fu Panda
expecting
4
that.
update.
We won't cover Kung Fu Panda 4 will not get its own episode. I'll just say like I'll put you can put me on the clock for 60 seconds as they talk about it.
Yeah, we'll get your timer. It'll be a YouTube short.
It'll be a YouTube short. It'll be a TikTok.
You know, I unrelated update, but I think we're kind of rearing down. So I wanna tell everyone on the podcast I finished Dune, the book. So now everyone on this podcast, we've all finished Dune, the book.
Congratulations to us. I'm really proud. I'm
Yeah,
so proud.
We read books, guys. We did it.
I mean,
It's funny because I feel like we all read it in like very like different amounts of time. Like you Renzo, you took 4 years to read your copy of Dune, like the same copy. And then I took about a month to read it, all like 700 pages, whatever. And then Castleman, you read it in like a couple days, like a week or something like that. Like,
no, you better include the years of Castleman not having, continued.
I had the book for like 3 years before I finally finished it.
But the thing is, you read the first half, and then recently you restarted it, right?
Yeah.
So I would count that. So for one full read through, that's crazy.
It took me a little less than a week, I think. I don't know.
This is the book club of the podcast now, ladies and gentlemen.
Read Dune. It's a great book.
Yeah,
it is.
Oh, Renzo, didn't you have something you wanted to say to the people of the podcast?
What was I supposed to say? Oh,
yeah, you had a thing. You have something you want to say to them, right?
There it is.